Michael Adams is the kind of man who never looks back. From his glass tower in downtown Chicago, he's built an empire. Adams Auto Group, wealth, prestige, everything success promises. But one afternoon, 5 children selling toy cars outside his dealership stop him cold. One of them holds a die-cast Aston Martin, the exact model he once gave to the woman he left behind. Their mother's name? Rachel Carter. Suddenly, the past he buried crashes into his present, because the children don't just look familiar, they look like him. As Michael steps into a modest apartment in Logan Square and sees Rachel again, ill, proud, and still luminous, he realizes these aren't just her kids, they're his. But claiming a family you abandoned isn't as simple as opening your wallet. With corporate betrayal looming and a fragile woman daring him not to make promises he can't keep, Michael must face the one question money can't answer. Is he willing to change? Stick around for a powerful story about redemption, responsibility, and the small toy car that rewrote one man's legacy. Hit subscribe if you believe second chances aren't given, they're earned. From his corner office atop the Adams Auto Group tower in downtown Chicago, Michael Adams surveyed the cityscape with a practiced gaze. The gleaming skyline mirrored his meticulously curated life, structured, commanding, and devoid of surprises. At 45, Michael had built an empire of luxury car dealerships, each showroom a testament to his relentless drive and uncompromising standards. Yet, on this particular afternoon, a disturbance disrupted his routine. Below, on the dealership's polished forecourt, a commotion unfolded. 5 children, no older than 10, were being escorted off the premises by his head of security. Their small hands clutched toy cars, and their faces bore expressions of defiance and desperation. Michael's brow furrowed. He pressed the intercom. UK. Hotels.com +24. Rachel Carter, sculpture, Luted Sagusa Origi +24. Paul, what's happening downstairs? Just some kids trying to sell toys, sir. I've asked them to leave. Michael's voice was firm. Hold them there. I'm coming down. Adams Auto Group Reviews. Com+23 dealer, Raiders 23 dealer. Raiders/23. Descending swiftly, Michael stepped onto the forecourt, his presence commanding immediate attention. The children stood in a huddle, their eyes wide with a mix of fear and curiosity. One of them, a boy with tousled hair and a determined stance, stepped forward, holding out a die-cast Aston Martin. "We're selling these to help our mom," he said, his voice steady. Michael took the toy, examining it closely. It was an exact replica of the car he had gifted Rachel Carter, his college sweetheart, years ago. The realization hit him like a jolt. The reader. Rachel Carter sculpture, Luted Nye, dealer Raider, Enyen. "What's your mother's name?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Rachel Carter," the boy replied. Michael's world tilted. The name he had tried to forget, the woman he had left behind in pursuit of ambition, now resurfaced in the most unexpected way. He looked at the children, their features strikingly familiar. A chilling thought crept in. Could they be his? "Where do you live?" he asked, trying to steady his voice. "Logan Square," the boy answered. Michael nodded, his mind racing. "Take me to her." As they walked, the city around them faded into a blur. Michael's thoughts were consumed by memories of Rachel, the laughter they shared, the dreams they once held, and the abrupt end he had imposed. He had left her without a word, choosing success over love. Now, fate had brought her back into his life, along with 5 children who might be his own. The journey to Logan Square was filled with silence, each step heavy with anticipation. Michael knew that the confrontation ahead would be the most challenging of his life. He had built an empire, but at what cost? The answer awaited him behind the doors of a modest apartment, where the past and present were about to collide. The children led Michael through the quiet streets of Logan Square, weaving past weathered brick buildings and iron fences tangled with ivy. The city was alive with the hum of traffic and distant music, but Michael barely registered it. His mind was churning. The boy had said her name, Rachel Carter, and the replica car had sealed it. Still, a part of him refused to believe it could be true. They stopped in front of a faded beige building with a crooked mailbox and peeling paint. "We live on the 3rd floor," the oldest girl said softly, her pigtails bouncing as she climbed the narrow stairs. Michael followed in silence. At the top, the door opened with a creak. Inside, the apartment was modest but clean. Toys lined the edges of the living room. A patched sofa sat across from a thrift store TV. On the far wall, photographs hung in mismatched frames. 5 smiling children at birthday parties, school plays, and quiet moments in the park. But what caught Michael's breath was a photo tucked between them, Rachel. She looked older, yes, tired. But her fire was still there. Those fiercely intelligent eyes, the slight upturn of her smile. Her arm was wrapped around all 5 children, who looked startlingly like him. He swallowed hard. "Mom's in her room," said the girl, who introduced herself as Emma. "She's not feeling well today." Before Michael could respond, the door to the back room creaked open. Rachel appeared slowly, gripping an oxygen tank as she stepped into view. Time stopped. Michael's breath caught in his throat. Her body was frailer than he remembered. Shoulders thinner, her skin pale, but her presence filled the room. She froze when she saw him, her lips parting slightly. The silence stretched between them, thick with years of things unsaid. "You," she finally whispered. Her voice was raspier than he remembered, but unmistakably hers. "You have a lot of nerve walking in here." Michael stepped forward slowly. "Rachel, I didn't know." She laughed bitterly, the sound sharp. "Didn't know? Michael, you disappeared. You walked away without a word. I thought you moved on. I was young, stupid, focused on building something. You were focused on yourself," she interrupted coldly. "I waited. I wrote letters. I called. But you vanished." Michael looked down, guilt rising in his throat like bile. "I was scared. Of love. Of commitment. I didn't think I was enough." Rachel's expression cracked for a second, pain flickering through her eyes, but she steadied herself. "And now? What changed?" He gestured toward the children who were peeking around the corner, watching silently. "Them. I saw them selling that car, the one I gave you, the one from graduation, and when I looked in their eyes, I saw myself." Rachel crossed her arms. "And what? You want a medal? You think you can just walk back in here and play dad after 10 years? "No," he said quietly. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just want to do something. Anything. Help with their care. Help with you." The room fell silent again, save for the low hiss of her oxygen machine. Rachel looked at her children, at Jack's anxious stance, Emma's protective posture, Riley's narrowed eyes, and then back to Michael. "You don't get to make promises unless you plan to keep them," she said. "I've raised them on truth. You want to help? Then prove you're not the same man who left." "I will," Michael said, voice cracking. "I swear it." Rachel nodded once. "Then start by listening." She motioned to the sofa and began to speak. About the years she worked 3 jobs, the night she went into labor alone, the illness that crept in quietly and made everything harder. Michael listened, his heart breaking with every word. The man who once drove Bentleys and closed billion-dollar deals sat in a hand-me-down chair in a Logan Square apartment, clutching a tissue, weeping silently as the woman he once loved told him how she'd survived without him. And, for the first time in years, Michael Adams didn't feel like a CEO. He felt like a father. The sun had nearly disappeared by the time Michael stepped out of the apartment building, the fading light casting long shadows across the sidewalk. His chest ached with emotions he hadn't let himself feel in over a decade. Regret, shame, disbelief. He sat on a nearby bench, the weight of Rachel's story still pressing down on him. How had he let this happen? How had he vanished from the life of a woman who clearly still carried pieces of him? Who had carried his children? His hands trembled as he pulled the tiny die-cast Aston Martin from his coat pocket. He turned it over, brushing his thumb along the underside. There, still etched faintly, were the initials, M&A, carved by a younger version of himself, believing in forever. Back then, it was a symbol of love and bold beginnings. Now, it felt like a tombstone. He had to know the truth. Pulling out his phone, he dialed the only man he trusted to find answers fast. "Wes Langford," the voice answered, brisk and confident. "It's me," Michael said. "I need you to drop everything." There was a pause. "You sound like hell. I need a full workup on a woman named Rachel Carter, formerly Rachel Lee. Last known residence is Logan Square. I need medical records, employment history, anything." "And the kids?" "There are 5, Michael said slowly, staring at the building across the street. "They look like me, Wes. Too much like me to be coincidence." Another pause. "You think they're yours?" Michael didn't respond right away. "I think I walked away from something I never should have let go, and I need to know what the hell happened to her, to them." "I'll call you back in a few hours," Wes said, and hung up. Michael slipped the toy car back into his pocket and stood up just as a voice called out from behind him. "Hey, mister!" He turned to see one of the boys, Jack, he remembered, trotting toward him. He held something in his small hand. "You dropped this," Jack said, offering a worn photograph. It was old, clearly from college. Michael recognized it immediately. It was him and Rachel, smiling wide, their arms wrapped around each other on the hood of the original Mustang. Michael's throat tightened. "Thanks, kid." Jack looked up at him, tilting his head. "Are you our dad?" The question hit Michael like a punch to the gut. He crouched down so they were eye level. "I don't know for sure yet," he said gently, "but I'm here to find out." Jack studied him for a long moment. "Emma says you have the same eyes. Riley says you don't smile like us. I think you look kinda sad." Michael smiled faintly. "Yeah, I guess I have been." Jack nodded solemnly. "We don't need a dad. We've been okay." "I believe you," Michael said, "but maybe you deserve one anyway." Jack looked unsure, then simply nodded and turned to go back upstairs. That night, Michael sat in his penthouse in Lake Forest, surrounded by silence. The luxury apartment was spotless, sterile, and cold. Nothing like Rachel's apartment, which overflowed with love even in hardship. He stared out at the skyline, his reflection ghost-like in the window. A man who had built a business empire, forged countless partnerships, made speeches to thousands, now left reeling from the realization that the most important thing in his life had been unfolding without him. The call came just before midnight. "Michael," Wes said, "she's clean. No criminal history. 3 jobs in the last 5 years, retail, part-time florist, administrative work. Her medical file from Northwestern was sealed, but I pulled strings." Michael sat upright. Rachel was diagnosed with idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis 2 years ago. Prognosis isn't good. It's why she's on oxygen. Life expectancy is about 3 to 5 years untreated, maybe longer with proper care. Michael felt his stomach drop. "There's more," Wes continued. "Birth certificates for the kids are listed with no father, but there's a hospital record from 10 years ago that shows her admitting under the name Rachel Lee, emergency delivery, Quintuplets. She was listed as uninsured, gave a fake address, and disappeared from the system for a while after that." "So she really raised them alone." "Looks like it. and she named you as an emergency contact in her most recent medical update, though she never sent anything directly. Michael sat in silence. His empire, his success, it all felt like dust in that moment. He wasn't just a man with a past anymore. He was a father with 5 children he'd never known. He looked down at the photo Jack had returned, then across the room at the high shelves of awards and framed magazine covers. None of it mattered. The next morning, Michael didn't go to his office. Instead, he went to the hospital. He walked into Northwestern Memorial, clutching the photo in one hand and the toy car in the other, symbols of the life he'd lost and the one he still had a chance to save. He had no idea how this story would end. But for the first time, he was ready to begin again. The stairwell smelled of old carpet, fried onions, and something metallic, like a leaky radiator. Michael's polished shoes echoed against the worn concrete as he climbed to the 3rd floor, following the sound of laughter and faint television static. His fingers grazed the paint-chipped banister, a tactile reminder of how far this place was from the pristine world he normally inhabited. A child's voice rang out, clear, curious, unguarded. "It's him, Emma! He came back!" The door was already ajar when he reached it, cracked open as if daring him to step into a life that had been quietly built without him. Michael took a steady breath and pushed the door wider. Inside, the apartment was a contradiction, modest but vibrant, cluttered but alive. Toys spilled from baskets. Art projects clung to the refrigerator with mismatched magnets. The scent of something herbal, lavender maybe, hung in the air. 5 faces looked up at him, each one a mirror in its own way. Their eyes, his eyes, stared with a mix of wonder and wariness. Then, from the far end of the living room, a soft voice cut through the room. "Michael," he turned. Rachel stood leaning on a walker, her oxygen line trailing behind her like a ghost of all the battles she'd fought alone. She looked thinner, her hair a little duller, skin pale, but her eyes, those fierce ocean dark eyes, still burned with the same fire he remembered from their college days. "I didn't expect you," she said quietly. "I had to come," he replied, his voice catching. "I had to see you, to see them." The children watched in silence, sensing the weight of something beyond their understanding. Rachel motioned toward the couch. "Sit. But let's get something straight. I'm only letting you in because they deserve answers." He nodded slowly and took a seat. Rachel lowered herself into the worn armchair across from him, the oxygen tube making a soft hiss. "They know nothing," she said. "I told them stories about you, the man who gave me the Mustang, the boy who loved engines more than textbooks. But I never told them you disappeared." Michael flinched. "I didn't know, Rachel, about them, about any of it, I swear." She studied him. "You vanished after graduation. No goodbye, no calls. I wrote you, twice. I even showed up at your old apartment, but you were gone. Your father said you left for Europe. I thought, maybe that was your answer." Michael's throat tightened. "I never got those letters. My father, he never said anything. I thought you moved on." Rachel gave a sad smile. "I had no choice." The children had drifted closer, sitting in a line on the floor, pretending to color, but clearly listening. "I named them myself," Rachel said, her voice suddenly gentler. "Jack, Emma, Sam, Noah, and Riley. They all came early. The doctor said they might not make it." Michael's eyes welled up. "But they did." "They did," she whispered. He looked around the room, at the drawings taped to the walls, the tiny shoes by the door, the framed photo of Rachel cradling 5 newborns. "You've done an incredible job." She exhaled slowly. "I did what I had to. No one's ever helped. Not really. I've worked 2 jobs at a time. I've missed meals so they wouldn't have to." Michael leaned forward. Let me help now. Please, I don't care how complicated this is. I want to be here." Rachel studied his face, then looked down at her trembling hands. "You don't get to show up and play hero after a decade. That's not how this works." "I know," he said softly, "but I'm not here to be a hero. I'm here to stay, if you'll let me." She looked at him for a long time, then nodded once, very slowly. "You can help, but only if you promise them nothing you can't keep." Michael swallowed hard. "I promise." At that moment, Jack climbed onto the couch beside him, holding a picture he'd drawn. "It's a Mustang," he said proudly, "like Mommy said you gave her." Michael took the paper with trembling fingers. The car was red, just like the one from college, but in the drawing, there were 6 stick figures standing around it, a family. His voice cracked as he whispered, "It's perfect." And, for the first time in years, something inside him, something buried beneath ambition and guilt, began to heal. The late afternoon light filtered through the apartment's sheer curtains, casting a soft golden glow on everything it touched. On the crayon marks that marred the wall near the kitchen, on the stack of folded laundry that never seemed to shrink, and on Rachel Carter's face as she sat across from the man who had once meant everything to her. Michael sat on the edge of the couch, his suit jacket folded over his lap, sleeves rolled up. The 5 children, his children, had settled into quiet games around the room. Jack was on the floor sketching Mustangs again. Emma carefully rearranged a vase of plastic flowers. Riley kept one eye on Michael as if trying to memorize his every move. Sam and Noah whispered to each other in the corner, sharing secrets only twins could understand. Rachel adjusted the oxygen tubing and said plainly, "I'm not going to sugarcoat this." Michael leaned in. "I wouldn't expect you to. When I found out I was pregnant, I panicked," she began, voice low but firm. "I was 24, newly graduated, no job lined up, and then you disappeared." Michael's jaw clenched. "I didn't know. I swear to you." Rachel held up a hand. "Let me finish." He nodded solemnly. "I waited a few weeks, hoping you'd come back, that you'd explain the silence. Then I saw your father in Evanston. He told me you'd left for Zurich, that you didn't leave a forwarding address, that your focus was on becoming someone. He doesn't have time for old distractions," he said. Michael's face turned pale. "My father said that?" "I believed him. Why wouldn't I? You always said you were going to make your mark, and I figured I was a detour you didn't want to take." "I never—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Rachel, he lied to both of us." Her expression didn't soften. "Well, by the time I realized I was carrying not 1 but 5 babies, it was too late for what-ifs. I moved in with my cousin for a while, then into this apartment. I started working night shifts as a CNA at St. Mary's. During the day, I'd bartend or clean offices. Anything to survive." Michael looked around again. Really looked. The wear on the furniture, the taped-up corners of the kids' books, the way the bathroom door didn't quite close all the way. "You did all of this without help." "Yes," she said quietly, "and I don't regret a second of it. They're my life. But you need to understand what that cost." "I do," he said, gently now, "and I want to help." Rachel's gaze locked on his, full of something unspeakably complex. "Don't make that offer unless you mean it." "I do. I'll be here. I'm not walking away again." She studied him for a moment longer, then turned toward the hallway. "Come with me." He followed her into the small bedroom she shared with the twins, where a large plastic bin sat at the foot of her bed. She knelt, unlatched it, and pulled out an old shoebox, tattered, water-stained, and wrapped in a rubber band. "This is all I kept," she said, handing it to him. Inside were mementos he never knew she still had. The graduation photo of the 2 of them by the red Mustang, a postcard he once mailed from California during a summer internship, and, at the very bottom, a small velvet pouch. Rachel opened it, and held out a familiar silver keychain, the one shaped like a steering wheel with his initials engraved on the back. "You gave me this the night you promised forever," she said softly, "right before you disappeared." Michael touched the keychain, overwhelmed. "I thought I was doing what I was supposed to, building something, making something of myself. I didn't realize I was losing everything that mattered." "You were always chasing legacy," Rachel said, stepping back. "Well, here's your legacy." She gestured toward the living room where the kids laughed at a cartoon playing on the muted TV. "They're smart, strong, stubborn, just like you. But if you want to be in their lives, they need more than gestures or guilt. They need presence. They need consistency." Michael nodded, overcome. "I want to earn that, however long it takes." Rachel exhaled, weariness flickering across her face. "Then start by being honest, with them, with yourself. And if you're going to help, help all the way." As they walked back into the living room, Michael's steps felt different, heavier with truth, lighter with purpose. He knelt beside the children and asked quietly, "Would it be okay if I stayed for dinner?" Jack beamed. Emma nodded solemnly. Sam and Noah grinned. Only Riley hesitated. Then, slowly, he handed Michael a paper plate and said, "But no onions. Emma hates onions." Michael smiled, heart swelling. "Got it. No onions." It was a small beginning, but it was real. The late-night quiet was broken by a thud. Michael jolted awake from the couch, heart racing. In the dim light, the flickering shadows of cartoons still danced across the TV screen, now muted. At first, he thought one of the kids had knocked something over, but then came the sound that turned his blood to ice, a faint gasp, like someone struggling for breath. He rushed down the hall toward Rachel's bedroom. The door was cracked open. He pushed it gently. "Rachel?" She was slumped halfway off the bed, one hand clutching her chest, the oxygen tubing tangled around her arm. Her lips were tinged with blue, her breaths shallow and ragged. "Rachel!" he shouted, darting to her side. "Dad?" Emma's sleepy voice came from behind. Michael turned to see all 5 children standing in the hallway, wide-eyed in their pajamas. "Stay back," he said firmly, grabbing his phone. "Emma, call 911. Tell them your mom can't breathe. Hurry." Emma scrambled for the cordless phone. Sam clutched her sleeve, crying softly. Rachel's eyes fluttered open. "The meds," she rasped. "I forgot." "It's okay. You're going to be okay," Michael said, voice trembling but steady. The ambulance arrived within minutes. Michael rode in the back, gripping Rachel's hand as paramedics administered oxygen and radioed vitals. She didn't speak again. Her eyelids fluttered, then closed. At Northwestern Memorial Hospital, everything became a blur of fluorescent lights, rapid footsteps, and clipped medical jargon. "Advanced pulmonary fibrosis," the attending physician explained. "She's had this for some time." Michael stared at the doctor in disbelief. She never said anything, just oxygen at night. Likely masking symptoms. Her lungs are struggling. We're admitting her immediately. Michael stepped into the hallway, stunned. He stared at the white linoleum floor, trying to steady himself. How could she hide something so serious? How could he not have seen it? Back in the waiting area, the children sat in a tight, silent group. Emma clutched Riley's hand. Sam rested his head on Noah's shoulder. Jack fidgeted with the toy Mustang again, a nervous tick. "Where's Mom?" Riley demanded the moment Michael returned. "She's stable," Michael said carefully, kneeling in front of them. "The doctors are taking good care of her, but she's going to need time to rest and recover." "Is she gonna die?" Noah whispered. Michael's heart clenched. "No," he said, with more conviction than he felt. "Not if I can help it." Emma's eyes welled with tears. "What do we do now?" Michael exhaled slowly. This was the moment. "You're coming with me." The children exchanged confused glances. "I have a house," he continued, "big enough for all of you, safe, with bedrooms and space to run and food that doesn't come out of a microwave. While your mom gets better, you'll stay with me." "No," Riley said sharply. "We're not leaving her." "You won't be," Michael assured him. "You'll visit every day, I promise. But the hospital's no place for kids to sleep, and your mom wants you to be okay." "She said that?" Emma asked cautiously. Michael nodded. "Before the ambulance came, she said, 'Take care of them,' and I will." They were silent for a long moment. "Do you even know how to take care of kids?" Jack asked. Michael chuckled softly. "Honestly, no, but I'm going to learn." By the next morning, the children were settled, nervously, into Michael's glass-walled mansion in Lake Forest. It was a sleek, modern space, the kind built for art collectors and executives, not kids with sticky fingers and mismatched socks. Mrs. Palmer, Michael's longtime housekeeper, greeted them with gentle hugs and warm pancakes. Emma clung to her backpack. "Are we guests?" Michael bent down to her level. "You're not guests. You're home, at least for now." Riley still wouldn't look at him. That night, after the kids were asleep in the hastily prepared guest rooms, Michael stood beside Rachel's hospital bed. Machines beeped softly around her. "You didn't tell anyone," he murmured, brushing a stray strand of hair from her forehead. "You carried all of this, alone." He took a seat and reached for her hand. "I've got them, Rachel. You said don't make promises I can't keep, so I won't promise perfection, but I do promise to stay." She didn't move, but her hand twitched slightly in his. Michael smiled through the tears in his eyes. "I'll take that as a yes." The sun had barely risen over Lake Forest when Michael stood at the edge of his sprawling estate, watching the Quintuplets explore their new surroundings. The mansion, once a symbol of his solitary success, now echoed with the laughter and footsteps of 5 curious children. Each room, previously pristine and untouched, was now alive with the chaos and joy only children could bring. Mrs. Palmer, his longtime housekeeper, approached him with a warm smile. "They're adjusting better than expected," she said, her eyes following the children as they chased each other across the lawn. Michael nodded, a mix of relief and apprehension washing over him. "It's a start," he murmured. Later that morning, Michael visited Rachel at the hospital. She looked frail, her breathing aided by machines, but her eyes sparkled with determination. "How are they?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Settling in," Michael replied, pulling up a chair beside her bed. "Mrs. Palmer is a godsend. She's keeping them on a routine, just like you wanted." Rachel reached out, her hand trembling slightly. "Thank you," she said, gripping his hand. "But remember our agreement. They can't know you're their father unless you're staying for good." Michael's grip tightened. "I remember, and I intend to stay." Rachel studied him, searching for any sign of doubt. Finding none, she nodded slowly. "Then let's take it one day at a time." Back at the mansion, Michael found himself immersed in the children's lives. He helped Jack build a model car, listened to Emma's stories about her favorite books, and played chess with Noah. Sam showed an uncanny interest in numbers, and Michael introduced him to basic finance concepts. Riley, however, remained distant, his eyes always watching, analyzing. One evening, as Michael tucked the children into bed, Riley lingered at the doorway. "Why are you doing all this?" he asked, his voice tinged with suspicion. Michael paused, choosing his words carefully. "Because I care. About all of you." Riley's eyes narrowed. "People who care don't just show up out of nowhere." Michael sighed, the weight of past mistakes pressing down on him. "You're right, but I'm here now, and I want to make things right." Riley studied him for a moment before nodding slowly. "We'll see." As the days turned into weeks, the mansion transformed. The once sterile halls were now adorned with children's artwork. The dining room, previously reserved for formal dinners, became a hub of activity, filled with laughter and the clatter of dishes. Michael found himself changing too. He adjusted his work schedule, delegating responsibilities to his COO, Linda Jenkins, and spending more time at home. He discovered the joys of bedtime stories, the challenges of helping with homework, and the simple pleasure of being present. One afternoon, while playing catch with Jack in the backyard, Michael's phone buzzed. It was a message from the hospital. Rachel's condition was improving. He shared the news with the children during dinner, and the room erupted in cheers. Even Riley cracked a smile. That night, as Michael stood on the balcony, gazing at the stars, he felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. The journey ahead was uncertain, but for the first time he felt ready to face it, not as a billionaire or a businessman, but as a father. Michael's days had shifted completely, from boardrooms and billion-dollar deals to school drop-offs, bedtime stories, and impromptu dance parties in the kitchen. But not everyone at Adams Auto Group was celebrating his transformation. Carl Benson, vice president of operations, sat in his downtown office overlooking Lakeshore Drive, fingers steepled beneath his chin. He had built his entire career in Michael's shadow, convinced he deserved the throne. Watching Michael suddenly walk away, only to babysit a group of kids, was more than Carl could stomach. "He's slipping," Carl said aloud, pacing, "and I'll be there when the empire falls." At the mansion, Michael was blissfully unaware. He spent the morning reading with Emma and Noah on the patio while Mrs. Palmer organized breakfast. Riley was watching from the corner, as always, quiet and skeptical. Sam was already dressed, helping Mrs. Palmer count pancake stacks. Jack tinkered with a remote control car on the floor, humming to himself. Michael smiled softly. "Not bad for a man who once couldn't even keep a houseplant alive," he joked. That afternoon, Linda Jenkins, the newly promoted COO, called with a warning. "Carl's asking questions," she said, "about the kids, about your leave. He's been digging into expense reports." Michael's smile faded. "Let me guess. He thinks I'm using company funds for my secret family? He hasn't said it, but that's the implication." Michael exhaled slowly, watching the children run across the lawn through his window. "I'll handle it. Thanks for the heads up, Linda." Meanwhile, Carl was already in motion. He reached out to a tabloid journalist who had covered Adams Auto's flashy launches years before. "I have a story for you," Carl said. "Think paternity scandal. Think hidden children and misused company money. How much is that worth to you?" The next morning, a bold headline graced the top of a popular gossip site. "Billionaire car, King, allegedly hiding quintuplets. Company funds may be involved." The story exploded online. Michael's phone buzzed nonstop. Investors, clients, board members. "Sir," Linda said urgently, "you need to respond. Fast." Michael looked down at the children, who had just finished breakfast and were now watching cartoons. He couldn't shield them from everything, but he could control this narrative. "Set up a press conference," he said, "and have Rachel brought in via secure medical transport. If we're telling the truth, let's do it all the way." At the impromptu event in the hospital's courtyard, Michael stood with Rachel at his side, pale but upright. The quintuplets held her hands and each other's, forming a semicircle. Michael stepped to the microphone. "A few days ago, I was accused of hiding my children and misusing company funds. Let me be clear. These are my children, and I didn't hide them. I just found them." He paused. Voice steady, gaze unwavering. "Every cent spent on their care has come from my personal wealth, and if being a father disqualifies me from leadership, so be it. But I won't apologize for being present, for finally doing something right." The crowd was stunned silent. Cameras flashed. Then, slowly, applause broke out. The video would later go viral with the caption, "Billionaire chooses fatherhood over fortune." In the following days, Rachel remained in stable condition, the children returned to school, and Michael's reputation not only recovered, it soared. Carl, however, wasn't so lucky. Internal audits revealed he had forged multiple financial documents during his smear campaign. Days later, he was arrested for embezzlement and obstruction. That evening, Riley approached Michael in the hallway, a serious look on his face. "I saw what you did today," Riley said. "That was brave." Michael knelt down to meet his eyes. "Thanks, Riley. It means a lot coming from you." Riley hesitated, then offered something he never had before: a hug. It was brief, a little stiff, but real. Michael held back tears. One battle had been won, but the true reward was standing in front of him. 5 reasons to keep going. Michael awoke to the sound of footsteps thudding softly down the hallway. At first, he thought it was a dream. Then he remembered. The mansion was no longer silent in the mornings. He threw on a sweatshirt and followed the sound to the kitchen, where Jack was already pouring milk into 5 mismatched bowls of cereal. Sam sat nearby with a calculator, adding up what appeared to be a fictional breakfast budget. Emma was halfway through drawing a breakfast menu on a whiteboard. Noah tapped his foot rhythmically on the tile, waiting for toast. Riley, as always, stood slightly apart, quietly observing. Michael leaned against the doorway, smiling softly. "Looks like I'm the last one up." "You snore," Jack said bluntly, grinning. "Do not," Michael replied, mock offended. "Yes, you do," Noah chimed in. "It sounds like a Mustang engine stalling." The kids laughed together, and Michael joined them at the table, soaking in the chaos and warmth. It was so foreign, yet somehow exactly what he'd always needed. Over the next few days, Michael made an effort to connect with each child on their level. With Jack, it was cars, naturally. They spent hours in the garage tinkering with old engines, Jack's eyes lighting up with every bolt turned. "This one's gonna purr when we're done," Jack declared, smearing grease across his cheek. "I have no doubt," Michael replied. "You've got the hands of a mechanic and the heart of a racer." With Sam, their bond grew over structure and spreadsheets. Michael's introduced him to the basics of business: inventory, profit margins, even branding. "I want to open a comic book cafe someday," Sam said seriously. "With snacks, Wi-Fi, and couches. Comics on one side, cookies on the other. I'll be your first investor," Michael promised, shaking Sam's hand like a real deal. Emma, full of quiet fire, taught him about empathy in the smallest gestures. When she made sandwiches, she cut the crusts just how Rachel used to. She always shared her last cookie. She checked the weather for everyone else's jackets before grabbing her own. "Dad," she said one night as she passed him a sweater without being asked, using the word as if it had always been there. Michael froze, warmth rising behind his eyes. He didn't correct her. He didn't want to. With Noah, it was music. He discovered an old piano tucked in the far sitting room and, shyly at first, started playing. Michael would sit beside him, letting the boy's fingers dance across the keys. "You ever take lessons?" he asked. Noah shrugged. "Just listen to stuff. Sometimes I hear songs in my head when it's too quiet." "I used to do that too," Michael whispered. "Keep playing, Noah. Fill every silence." But it was Riley who remained a fortress. Michael tried everything: basketball, cooking, even late-night snacks. But Riley kept his distance, fiercely loyal to the way things had always been. One night, after the others had gone to bed, Michael found him on the balcony, staring out into the dark. "You're not like the rest of us," Riley said without looking. "You came from glass towers and private jets. We came from second-hand clothes and making PB&Js for dinner." Michael stepped beside him. "You're right. I didn't grow up the way you did. I didn't even know what I was missing until I saw all of you." Riley crossed his arms. "You weren't there. Mom was." Michael nodded, feeling every word like a punch to the gut. I can't change the past, but I'm here now, not because I have to be, because I want to be." Riley said nothing, but he didn't leave either. That night, Michael called Rachel at the hospital. Her voice, though faint, carried strength. "They're doing okay?" she asked. "They're extraordinary," he said quietly. "They're rebuilding me." She laughed softly, then coughed. "Told you they'd change your life. They already have." Down the hallway, a light switched off. Michael stood at the top of the stairs, listening to the sounds of children breathing, floorboards settling, and, somewhere in the distance, a wind chime. Rachel had once loved tinkling gently in the breeze. The house was no longer a mansion. It was becoming a home. The front page of the Chicago Chronicle hit newsstands early Monday morning. Billionaire CEO hiding quintuplets, Adams' auto empire under fire. The article was filled with speculation. Unconfirmed claims that Michael Adams had fathered 5 children out of wedlock, covered it up, and funneled corporate funds into their care. The source? An anonymous tip with insider access. At the breakfast table, Sam's spoon stopped mid-air. Emma quietly folded the paper, as if protecting her siblings from the words. Riley didn't even blink. Michael stared at the photo splashed across the page. Himself, crouching beside Jack and Noah outside the dealership, a half-smile on his face. It had been taken from a distance. He didn't have to guess who was behind it. Carl Benson. At that moment, Michael's phone rang. It was Linda Jenkins, his COO. "Michael," she said urgently, "the board wants a closed-door meeting. They're panicking. The press is circling. Carl's feeding them every whisper he can." "Let them circle," Michael replied, voice calm but tight. "And call my legal team. We're not hiding anything." Later that morning, in a tense boardroom high above the city, Michael entered wearing no tie, sleeves rolled up, eyes steeled. Carl stood at the far end, arms crossed, smirking with self-satisfaction. "Michael," he said coolly, "it's about time we talk accountability. For your personal decisions. For the company's image." "You mean the family you never bothered asking about?" Michael shot back. "Or the integrity this company was built on, the same one you've spent years trying to erode?" He stepped forward, then dropped a stack of papers onto the table. "What's this?" Carl asked uneasily. "Your expense reports," Michael said, flipping open a page. "Trips billed to the company under fake client names, shell accounts routed through our marketing budget. Looks like the kids aren't the only illegitimate cost here." Gasps rippled through the room. Linda stood up. "We've cross-verified it all. Carl forged over $2 million in transactions. He's been laundering money through fake consulting firms he owns." Carl paled. "Security is waiting in the lobby," Michael added. "You're done." Carl lunged forward, face twisted with rage. "You think this makes you a saint? Playing house with 5 kids doesn't erase a decade of absenteeism." Michael didn't flinch. "No, but it proves I'm not the man I used to be. You, on the other hand, have been the same snake since the day I hired you." Security entered and escorted Carl out, kicking and cursing. When the door shut, the room fell into a stunned hush. Michael turned to the board. "I won't apologize for choosing family," he said simply. "These children aren't a scandal. They're a miracle. And if any of you believe they compromise this company's future, you're welcome to leave." No one moved. A few exchanged glances. Linda nodded in quiet solidarity. Back at the hospital, Rachel watched the press conference unfold live from her hospital room. He stood behind a podium with the company logo behind him and a simple message written beneath it. "Integrity begins at home." "I want to clarify something," Michael told the cameras. "Those 5 children, Jack, Sam, Noah, Emma, and Riley, they are not a secret. They are not a liability. They are my children, and I am proud of them." He glanced to the side. The kids, standing beside Rachel's hospital bed, stared in awe at the screen. Emma wiped her eyes. Riley's arms slowly uncrossed. Rachel swallowed against the lump in her throat. "I met Rachel Carter years ago," Michael continued, "and lost her because I was chasing ambition, not listening to my heart. But fate gave me another chance. I will not waste it." Reporters shouted questions, but Michael stepped away, ending the conference on his own terms. That night, he sat in the hospital room holding Rachel's hand. The kids were asleep in the waiting area, curled up on couches. "You didn't have to do that," she whispered. "Yes," he said softly. "I did." Outside the hospital, a crowd had gathered, not with picket signs but candles. Someone held a handmade sign. "Every family deserves a second chance." Rachel squeezed his hand. "So, what now?" Michael looked toward the hallway where the kids slept. "Now," he said with quiet certainty, "we build something real, together." Sunlight spilled softly through the hospital room blinds as Michael Adams approached the little alcove where Rachel sat propped up in bed. The quintuplets gathered around her in a semicircle. Jack and Sam clutched their toy cars. Emma held Riley's hand, and Noah fiddled with the edge of his blanket. Their faces, bright yet tentative, reflected a complex blend of anticipation and apprehension. Michael's heart pounded as he cleared his throat, the words he'd rehearsed overnight suddenly seeming inadequate. Rachel squeezed his shoulder encouragingly, her pale eyes warm with quiet resolve. "Kids," he began, gently, voice a touch wavering, "there's something Rachel and I need to tell you. We haven't been completely honest." The children exchanged anxious glances. Riley, who'd been the most guarded since the first day, narrowed his brow and crossed his arms. "Are you hiding more secrets?" he asked, voice low but firm, echoing the protective stance he'd held from the start. Michael swallowed, then met each child's gaze in turn. Jack's curious twinkle, Sam's solemn innocence, Emma's hopeful optimism, Noah's shy kindness, and Riley's wary determination. "I'm your dad," he said simply, gently as a sunrise. "I've been afraid to say it, because I know I hurt Rachel before. I ran away, chasing work and ambition, and I left your mom alone. But you, 5, you're my sons and daughters, and I love you." A stunned silence fell, broken only by the faint beep of the heart monitor. Emma's eyes welled with tears as she squeezed Riley's hand. Jack blinked in disbelief. Sam's lower lip trembled. Noah pressed a small hand to his mouth, eyes wide, and Riley, chest rising and falling with cautious control, finally uncrossed his arms. Rachel reached out, brushing a curl from Emma's forehead. "You aren't a secret to me," she said softly, voice thick with emotion. "I never told you because I wasn't sure how to protect you, and because I was so scared he'd never come back." Riley swallowed audibly. "You knew?" he demanded of Rachel, hurt lacing his tone. "You let me tell everyone Daddy is somewhere out there but never told me he was right here?" Tears threatened in Rachel's eyes. She shifted to face Riley squarely. "Yes, I knew, and I'm sorry. I needed to keep you safe. I know that feels unfair, and I regret it every day." Riley's shoulders shook as he stifled a sob. Michael knelt to be eye level. "Riley," he said earnestly, "I understand why you're angry. I don't expect you to call me Dad today, tomorrow, or maybe ever. But I promise you this. I'm not going anywhere again. If you let me stay, I'll show up every day for everything you need." Riley's lip quivered. He looked at each sibling, then back at Michael. Slowly, he uncrossed his arms and Emma breathed a soft, hopeful sigh. "Okay," Riley whispered, voice small but resolute. "I'll give you a chance." Jack darted forward and hugged Michael's waist exuberantly. Sam and Noah joined in a sandwich embrace. Emma laid a gentle hand on Michael's cheek, eyes bright with tears. Michael, closed his eyes momentarily as warmth flooded through him. Rachel watched, tears freely flowing now. "Family," she said, voice breaking, "is the hardest thing to ask for forgiveness in, but also the greatest gift to give." Michael rose, gathering each child into his arms one by one, holding them as tenderly as he had in his dreams. He whispered each name, promising small gestures, a read aloud at bedtime, weekend park trips, help with homework, even a rebuilt treehouse. The children's giggles and muffled sobs echoed softly in the room, weaving together heartbreak and hope. Later, after the afternoon visitors had drifted away, Michael and Rachel sat with the children as they colored quietly at a small table Michael had brought in. The mood was peaceful, suffused with tentative trust. Riley looked up at Michael. "Don't let me forget why I gave you that chance," he said earnestly. Michael nodded solemnly. "I won't," he vowed. "Every day I'll earn it." As the coloring pencils scratched gently on paper, Michael felt a profound shift within himself. The image of a family, once fractured, was taking shape, fragile but undeniable. His CEO office and boardroom battles seemed distant now. Here, in this quiet hospital room filled with crayons and curriculum vitae, he was building something far more precious. And, for the first time in years, Michael Adams believed that destiny's course, though long and winding, had finally led him home. Over the next several weeks, the Adams household settled into an intricate new rhythm. Equal parts tender hope, tentative trust, and the usual beautiful chaos that comes with 5 spirited children. Michael rose before dawn each morning, trading his tailored suits for jeans and a soft sweater as he padded through the expansive West Loop penthouse, now strewn with colorful socks, toy cars, and half-finished drawings. He quietly brewed coffee in the industrial kitchen while Jack and Sam rummaged through the cereal cabinet, giggling as they argued over who got the last bowl of frosted flakes. By 7:15, Emma and Noah tumbled into the kitchen, sleepy-eyed but eager, dragging Riley behind them. With gentle patience, Michael ladled oatmeal into bowls, patiently stirring in mashed bananas for Emma, and carefully omitting them for Eli, who'd confessed to hating the fruit. Over breakfast, they planned the day. School, soccer practice, art class, and, a favorite addition, weekend visits to Michael's oak-paneled office where they would help press cupcakes into silk liners and manage important papers. At 8:30 sharp, Michael walked the Quintuplets to the front door, where Mrs. Palmer, his longtime housekeeper-turned-guardian, waited with backpacks and hugs. "Have a marvelous day, my dears," she called warmly, ruffling Jack's hair. Riley lingered, offering Michael a steady nod of acknowledgement before shoving his hands into his coat pockets and marching out with his siblings. As the elevator doors slid shut, Michael exhaled deeply, allowing the quiet of the empty penthouse to envelop him. He straightened his shoulders, slipping effortlessly back into CEO mode, and yet nothing felt quite the same. The sleek glass conference table he once favored for solitary lunches now felt stark without the energetic echoes of 5 children's footsteps. By 9:00 a.m., Michael was reviewing quarterly projections in his private office when his phone buzzed. It was Linda Jenkins, his newly empowered COO. "Morning, Michael," she said briskly but kindly. "I wanted to let you know I've finalized the restructuring. The merger talks with Eastbrook Holdings are on hold until you return next week, and I've assigned the new European expansion to Derek Sands. You deserve this time with your family." Her thoughtful competence brought a lump to Michael's throat. "Thank you, Linda," he replied earnestly. "I trust your judgment completely." He clicked off the call, staring out at the Chicago skyline. He still loved these views, but now his heart belonged to the laughter waiting in the quietly humming penthouse below. At noon, he made his way back upstairs for a brief lunch amidst the day's gentle errands, checking in on the housekeeper's staffing schedule, sending a text to Rachel confirming tomorrow's hospital visit time, and approving a colorful mural for the living room wall, an exuberant collage of rainbows, stars, and stick figure families, painted by Emma, Riley, and the boys. He cracked a rare smile as he read the children's scrawled signatures at the bottom. Love your family. That evening, Rachel arrived for her weekend visit. She entered through the penthouse's sleek foyer and was immediately met with the scent of home. Fresh-baked chocolate chip cookies cooling on the counter, a half-finished puzzle on the coffee table, and the soft strum of Jack's genuine, off-key rendition of Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star on a borrowed guitar. Rachel paused, eyes shimmering as she took it all in, then stepped forward to embrace Michael. "You've transformed this place," she whispered, voice thick with wonder. He kissed her temple gently. Everyone, wanted it to feel like home. I know it's messy, but I love it." She guided him toward the living room, where the quintuplets sat sprawled across the plush rug, building a block tower that reached toward the vaulted ceiling. Riley offered her a triumphant grin as his tower teetered precariously, while Emma bounced in place, proud of her siblings' collective creation. Michael watched Rachel's face light up. His heart swelled as the children's eyes followed his lead, waving shyly. That night, after he tucked the last sleepy head into the newly assembled bunk beds, Michael and Rachel sat together by the glow of the fireplace, warmed by flickering embers and shared glances. They spoke softly about the future, school visits, holiday plans, even the faint but persistent hope of another baby, a conversation once unthinkable, now spoken in gentle, confident whispers. Before Rachel left, Michael pulled her close in the foyer. "You've given me back everything I didn't realize I lost," he murmured. She smiled through her tears, pressing her forehead to his. "And you've given them a father," she replied softly. "None of us are perfect, but we're together." As she disappeared into the elevator's closing doors, Michael lingered in the stillness, listening to distant laughter echoing from the bedrooms upstairs. The city lights twinkled beyond the windows. Once his greatest source of pride, now the backdrop to a far richer landscape of love and belonging. Michael closed his eyes, mentally etching that moment into memory. He'd stepped away from the boardroom, relinquished the illusion of control, and accepted the unpredictable, beautiful whirlwind of family life. In the softly illuminated penthouse, surrounded by the messy evidence of 5 children's creativity, crumbs on the countertop, muddy footprints by the door, the faint hum of a half-played lullaby, Michael Adams realized that this, at last, was his true legacy. A gentle spring breeze drifted through the patio doors of Michael's West Loop penthouse, carrying the faint fragrance of magnolias from the rooftop garden below. On the terrace, lanterns flickered in the soft twilight, casting a warm glow over a small circle of priceless faces. Michael, Rachel, and the quintuplets, Jack, Sam, Emma, Noah, and Riley, giggling as they wiggled into their chairs around a low bistro table. Nearby, Mrs. Palmer bustled quietly, smoothing table linen and arranging delicate plates of homemade strawberry shortcake. Linda Jenkins, Michael's COO turned steadfast ally, discreetly slipped a glass of sparkling lemonade into his hand with an encouraging nod. Michael cleared his throat, the laughter of the children fading into expectant silence. His heart pounded with a mixture of joy, gratitude, and a hint of nerves he hadn't felt in years. He looked across the table at Rachel, her auburn hair catching the lantern light, her pale cheekbones softly illuminated, and her eyes filled with an affectionate warmth that made his chest ache. He took a steadying sip of lemonade, the bubbles tickling his throat. "Everyone," he began, voice resonant yet tender, "I promised you all I would keep my word, that I would show up every single day in big ways and small." He paused, surveying the circle of 5 bright faces, each one beaming at him with open trust. "I've learned that family isn't about perfection. It's about presence. It's about waking up each morning determined to love, to protect, to nurture, even when it's messy, even when it's hard." Jack nudged his twin brother Sam, both eyes shining. Emma draped her arm around her younger brother Noah's shoulders, and Riley finally allowed himself a shy grin. Michael swallowed, fighting the lump in his throat. He reached down to the side table and lifted a small velvet box, its exterior scuffed gently by curious little fingers earlier in the day. With uncharacteristic solemnity, he dropped to one knee before Rachel. The children gasped collectively, huddling together in fascinated whispers as Rachel covered her mouth with both hands, wide-eyed. Michael opened the box to reveal a simple, elegant ring, a slender band of white gold, set with a single pearl cradled by tiny diamond petals. It was not the extravagant token he once would have chosen, but a symbol of enduring simplicity, of the quiet promise he now understood was worth far more than any grand gesture. "Rachel Carter," he said, voice hushed but unwavering, "you taught me that love demands presence. You trusted me with our children when I was at my lowest, and you gave me reason to hope again. Will you marry me, again, and continue building this wonderfully unpredictable life with me?" Time seemed to stretch in the warm spring air as Rachel stared at him, tears glittering in her eyes. The children leaned forward, their small faces glowing with anticipation. Mrs. Palmer dabbed at her own eyes discreetly, and Linda Jenkins offered Michael an encouraging smile. With a trembling laugh, Rachel nodded, voice cracking with emotion. "Yes," she whispered, touching the ring gently. "Yes, Michael, 1,000 times, yes." A cheer erupted around them. Jack and Sam jumped to their feet, nearly tipping over their chairs. Emma clapped her hands so enthusiastically her strawberry shortcake slid off its plate, and Riley, ever the protector, gave Michael a heart-melting hug that nearly knocked him off his knee. Noah grinned so wide he looked ready to burst with happiness. Michael stood and lifted Rachel into an embrace, the ring catching the lantern light like a beacon. He held her close as the children swarmed around them, laughter, tears, and joyful shouts mingling in the balmy evening air. Linda and Mrs. Palmer exchanged triumphant looks before quietly slipping away to prepare for the impromptu rooftop celebration that Michael had insisted on, complete with a small jazz quartet Michael had surprised the children with. Later, as music drifted softly across the rooftop and the children danced barefoot under the glow of string lights, Michael led Rachel to the center of the terrace. He spun her gently to the lilting melody of a saxophone, the city skyline behind them a tapestry of glittering lights. She rested her head against his shoulder, and he kissed her temple as the quintuplets rushed in circles around them. "This," he murmured warmly, "this is what matters most." Rachel lifted her head, her eyes bright. "Yes," she replied, pressing her lips to his, "because we chose each other and our family every single day." Above, a lone firefly drifted past, its faint glow a reminder that small moments often carry the greatest magic. On the rooftop terrace of the penthouse, once a solitary man's kingdom, 5 children laughed. 2 lovers rediscovered one another, and a new promise shimmered in the spring air, a promise of patience, presence, and a love that, at last, would never walk away. A year after that spring evening on the rooftop terrace, Michael Carter woke before dawn, stirred by the faint glow of streetlights filtering through the bedroom curtains. He lay still for a moment, listening to the soft breathing of the 5 beds lined against the far wall, Jack and Sam sharing one, Emma and Noah in the middle pair, and Riley in his own bed near the window. Each child's gentle exhale reminded him of every moment they had woven into his life. Scraped knees, healed with kisses, bedtime stories told in sleepy whispers, the triumphant laughter after their first successful lemonade stand. His heart swelled with a warmth he'd never known in his solitary years as CEO. He slipped quietly from the bed shared with Rachel, careful not to wake her, and padded softly toward the entryway. There, in a recessed glass case, sat the Aston Martin toy car that had first reunited them a year ago. Beneath it, a bronze plaque bore the inscription Rachel had suggested: "Sometimes, the smallest things lead us back to what matters most." Michael traced the words with his finger, recalling the day the Quintuplets had nervously shown him that identical miniature replica. Who knew a simple die-cast model could steer an empire-burdened man back to love and family? Downstairs, Linda Jenkins was already at her desk, reviewing the morning's construction updates for the Hope Legacy Center, a community space Michael had dedicated to at-risk youth, built on land donated by Adams Auto Group. She looked up, offering a tired but genuine smile. "Good morning," she whispered, as if not to disturb the slumbering children above. "Morning," Michael replied quietly, slipping into the seat beside her. The center's progress was nearing completion. A large gym, art studio, tutoring rooms, and a small car workshop echoing his company's roots, where kids could learn mechanics under the guidance of volunteer mentors. It had become his passion project, a testament to the lessons he'd learned. That opportunity and presence could change lives. He glanced at the tall plans pinned to the wall. The grand opening was in 2 weeks, and Rachel would join him to cut the ribbon. Beside her stood the Quintuplets, each dressed in bright T-shirts bearing the center's logo, a stylized steering wheel blossoming into a sunflower. Riley's protective arm around Emma's shoulders, Jack and Sam chattering about car engine designs, and Noah proudly holding a stack of mechanical blueprints they'd drafted together. Michael felt a bubble of pride rise in his chest. That afternoon, he descended the spiral staircase to find the children and Rachel on the terrace. They had transformed the once sterile penthouse into a cozy home, colorful art on the walls, potted plants by every windowsill, a play corner with toy cars, and a small piano Rachel had insisted on for music lessons. Mrs. Palmer was setting out lemonade and chocolate chip cookies on the low table, while the Quintuplets chattered excitedly about showing Dad their latest creations. "Dad!" Emma called, waving a drawing. The others joined in, each clamoring to present their artwork. Architectural sketches for the center, comic book-style renditions of family adventures, and designs for custom go-karts they dreamed of building in the Hope Legacy workshop. Michael kneeled, gathering the 6 of them in an affectionate hug. "These are incredible," he said, voice thick with emotion. "I'm so proud of all of you." He looked up at Rachel, who stood nearby with a gentle smile. She reached out, slipping her hand into his. Her eyes told him everything: love, gratitude, and the unspoken acknowledgement of how far they'd come. As dusk settled, the family walked down Magnolia Avenue toward Lincoln Park, where the boys had school baseball practice and Emma and Noah had a violin recital. Michael carried Riley on his shoulders, while Mrs. Palmer and Linda trailed behind, sharing an amused glance at the joyous chaos. Rachel walked arm in arm with Emma, her oxygen cannula discreetly hidden beneath a scarf. The 5 children chattered about everything from baseball stats to car engine torque, their laughter a symphony Michael would never tire of. Later, as they returned in the glow of street lamps, snow began to drift down in lazy flakes, the first snow of the season. The Quintuplets gasped and bounded into the hotel's courtyard, scooping handfuls of snow to toss at each other. Michael and Rachel watched, arms linked, as the children made snow angels, their gleeful cries echoing off brick walls. "Look at them," Rachel said softly, resting her head against his shoulder. "They're so full of life." Michael brushed a flake from her hair, smiling tenderly. "And they're ours." Rachel tilted her face up to his. "You found your way back to me?" "No," he corrected gently, gazing toward the children. "They found us all." They stood together in silence, snowflakes settling on their coats, as 5 small figures danced in the courtyard. In that moment, amid the laughter, the falling snow, and the promise of tomorrow, Michael Carter knew he had finally built the legacy worth more than any skyscraper or empire. A family united by love, resilience, and the smallest, most powerful things. The snow continued to fall, blanketing the world in quiet peace, and Michael felt contentment fill his heart. As he held Rachel close and watched their children, he whispered under his breath, "This is everything I ever needed, And for the first time in his life, he truly believed it.